What is a video game addiction? Currently, there is no single universal agreed upon definition of video game addiction. There is no set number of hours one must play in order to be considered addicted to video games. Most definitions of video game addiction refer to excessive play, which results in negative emotional, social, relational, educational, or career-related consequences. Instead of devoting energy to real-world activities and pursuits, a video game addiction spends most of his or her time playing games. Someone who has developed a video game addiction prioritizes gaming accomplishments over all other activities, such as spending time with friends and family, school achievement, work performance, and interpersonal relationships. Video game addiction may also be defined as a serious loss of control over gaming that leads to significant harm for the player in the real world. Can video game addiction be diagnosed? Video game addiction is not currently considered a diagnosable disorder and does not appear in any official mental health classification system. There is, however, a punish among some mental health professionals and video game addicts themselves to have video game addiction recognized as a real disorder. However, the next version of Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders will not include a diagnosis of video game addiction. Future editions of mental health classification manuals may include internet and video game addiction as impulse control disorders, but for now the terms of informal descriptions rather than official diagnosable conditions. What are the signs of video game addiction? Essential efforts to define video game addiction were made by modifying the diagnostic criteria for known addictions such as compulsive gambling. However, this informal method has not been widely adopted, and as such, psychologists and psychiatrists and researchers have been forced to define video game addiction without standardized diagnosis criteria. Definitions of video game addiction often include the following symptoms: significant negative impact on work performance, school achievement, and on interpersonal relationships. Spending most of one's free time playing video games, frequently playing video games for 6 to 8 hours nonstop. A loss of interest in social activities, and avoid of personal responsibilities or commitments so that gaming can continue. Often staying up very late to play video games, which regularly leads to feeling very fatigued the next day. What problems are caused by video game addiction? Video game addiction obviously does not have the same impact on everyone who experiences it. In general, the problems associated with unhealthy video game habits can be classified according to the 5 following categories. Emotional problems. People struggling with video game addiction may be at a greater risk for depression, loneliness, social anxiety, anger, and feelings of shame or embarrassment for spending so much time playing games. Note that these issues may be a result of video game addiction, but may also play roles in the development of excessive play. Financial problems. This is not typically an issue for children, but adults and adolescents may find themselves spending large sums of money on new computer equipment, consoles, subscription fees, and of course, new video games. Additionally, financial difficulties can occur when the person loses the motivation to work. A frequent occurrence has his or her hours reduced due to poor job performance or is fired. Health problems. People addicted to video games often develop poor sleep habits due to late night gaming sessions, may neglect personal hygiene, may get very little physical activity, and may make poor choices with regard to eating. Frequent snacking so that gaming can continue rather than having proper meals. Excessive video game play has been linked to childhood obesity. Social problems. As the addiction worsens, video game addicts tend to spend more time playing and less quality time with friends, family, or significant others. The addict may claim that he or she has lots of friends online, yet still experience loneliness, depression, and social isolation due to the lack of in-person contact with others. Family problems. Family problems may be the most common difficulty for those who are addicted to video games. Although poor family relationships may increase the likelihood of video game addiction, Video game addiction often leads to family conflict. Someone addicted to video games may accuse considered family members of trying to interfere in his or her life, may be verbally or physically aggressive, when others attempt to limit gameplay and may try to hide just how much he or she plays. Parents with children or teens addicted to video games may disagree about how much of the problem it is or how to intervene. What are the risk factors for video game addiction? Having higher levels of trait, aggression, and neuroticism, positively evaluating one's personal intelligence and negatively evaluating one's social skills, favoring online role-playing games, having a greater degree of impulsivity and limited ability to regulate emotions, having a lot of free time and little involvement in structured activities outside of the work and school. What makes video game addictive? Researchers and clinics are starting to closely examine exactly what makes video games addictive. To date, research on video game addiction has generally found that certain games and game genres are potentially more addictive than others. That is, all video games are not equally likely to result in excessive use. Most research suggests that massively multiplayer online games like World of Warcraft and first-person shooter games like Call of Duty tend to be more addictive than other genres like platforms, fighters, racers, and casual games. What is becoming clear that the more addictive games often intertwine well-established psychological principles into gameplay to encourage longer and more frequent gaming sessions in general. What % of children are addicted to video games? This has been a difficult question to answer because as previously mentioned, there is no official set of diagnostic criteria of video game addiction. Consequently, different studies and surveys have been forced to develop their own definitions of video game addiction. Not surprisingly, this has led to inconsistent conclusions about the prevalence of video game addictions in children and teens. At present, however, most research on video game addiction suggests that from 2 to 10% of children who play video games are addicted, recalling that virtually all children play video games. Even a 2% rate of addiction translates into many children with very unhealthy gaming habits. More accurate and consistent estimates of video game addiction prevalence will be possible if video game addiction is eventually guaranteed official status as a clinical disorder with clear symptoms of a diagnosis. Which treatment is available for video game addiction? Family therapy, which involves modifying the family systems, interactions, and family dynamics that may contribute to excessive gaming habits. Family therapy is a more common when the identified clinic is a child or a teen. Family therapy may be helpful for video game addiction, but it may be quite challenging for the necessary family members to commit to the process. One-to-one consulting with a psychologist or therapist who has expertise in treating video game addiction. This may be the best option if one is able to find an affordable and qualified therapist in his or her area. But unfortunately, video game addiction specialists remain quite rare, although this is changing as the problem becomes more prevalent. Video game addiction books offering self-help treatment for excessive gaming. For those who are unable to find a qualified therapist or afford more expensive treatment options, step-by-step guides to stopping video game addiction for oneself or for someone else can be a very convenient and helpful alternative.